Hey everyone, I'm Johnny, and this is my co-host Connor.
Welcome to our podcast, Dad Shoes.
Have you ever wondered where a dad joke comes from?
Or how dads just seem to have the right wisdom for the moment?
Or you're just trying to figure out what your dad was thinking?
Maybe you are a dad, and you just need to hear,
Hey man, us too.
well, we're learning what it's like to wear the dad shoes.
We'd like to invite you to join us on this journey.
First things first, though, John. How's your dad doing?
My dad is doing great. I talked to him this morning for almost an hour, and he just sounded super great.
That's good.
Almost back to his old self. And I don't know if I said it on the pod, but he had COVID, and
It's a little rough go there for a bit.
yeah, it was a rough go for a little bit. I've had to deal with death quite a bit in my personal life and on a more professional level. But when I was in high school, actually, I guess it was middle school, my mom's father died on Thanksgiving. And then a year later, right after Thanksgiving, my dog died, which not such a big deal, but it sets up a chain. It sets up a chain. Yeah. So, the next year, my first year of high school, my aunt passed. And my aunt was 40. She just turned 40. No, she wasn't even. She was 39. And she'd had kidney failure when she was 16 and was on dialysis for years. So she was too young to die. Really went before her time. And the next year, my great-grandfather died, and he and I were real close. And this is my aunt's grandfather, right? So it was like all my dad's side of the family. My mom's side started it, and then it was all my dad's side. And then in the next year and a half, my grandmother and grandfather passed. Grandfather and then grandmother. But those were four people I was really close to for a while. And to watch them die like boom, 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 it sucked. There's not much better way to put that. It just sucked. So I'm not unfamiliar with death. And it wasn't until I was older that I realized the big loss. There were just questions that I had for my grandparents that I never asked them because I didn't know I had these questions for them. So,
yeah.
That was the big loss. Not having them, the person here, that's kind of a bummer. But, questions about our family and about their lives that I'm interested in because it's part of my history. It was just, that was something that I wanted. After the fact, I wanted to have a conversation with them, and I couldn't because they weren't here. And when my dad went into the hospital, okay, it's fine. He'll be okay. It's not the end of the world. I was actually down. I'd been at your house the day before, and I'm with my mother, and we're talking about stuff. And I didn't really notice it at first, but I was clearly in my own head, kind of thinking about whatever. And it didn't click at first until my mom's like, "Honey, it's not a death sentence," and she could spot that I was not taking it the best. And it's not a death sentence. I'm like, well, for him, it might be. He's got chest issues and he's got a chronic inflammation issue. So he's got a history of things that COVID will attack. And
some pre-existing conditions.
Yeah.
Quote unquote.
Right. And ironically, these pre-existing conditions, the medicine for them are like the drugs to beat COVID. That we've now found. So he's already taking massive doses of prednisone. He's on the remdesivir, and he was already on that stuff before. They think he got it in the hospital, like he was in the hospital for this chest issue. Mm-hmm. And then he went home, and then a week later, he was back in the hospital with COVID. They think he got it at the hospital. So he's already on these. He's kind of got a head start on fighting the disease because he was already on these drugs. And I thought it was like 2, maybe 3 weeks. I thought he went in like the middle of February, the second week of February. Apparently, he was in the end of January, and he got out of the hospital Monday or Tuesday. Mm. So he's doing so much better now. But it was kind of scary there for a bit, and I don't know.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I've had to deal with the loss of somebody close to me, but not a parent. And I know that it's kind of silly. Actually, I think it is silly that your parent, because they are your parent, you would be, it would have a bigger impact on you than somebody else you were really close to, another family member, for instance, or, I think there is something about the parent that we as human beings, we put extra stock in that. And I don't know. I just didn't, it wasn't until then that I had to really think about, well, what's life going to be like without a parent, without a dad? So I remember when my grandmother died, she went after my grandfather, and my dad, a couple of days after she'd passed, it was before the funeral, he was climbing up the stairs, and I was at the top of the stairs, and he just stopped and looked at me and said, I just realized I'm an orphan. And I'm like, oh, dang. That was like I remember the look in his eyes, and that was kind of like, oh, okay, you're an orphan now. And at what age are you no longer an orphan? I mean, if you don't have parents,
yeah,
what does that make you? So
I think he's aged out.
You think so?
I don't want to be rude.
Hey, you know what? It's okay. I don't think that's rude. That's that's fine.
It is what it is.
Yeah, that's whatever. But no, I don't know. You've had to deal with that before. How did you?
Yeah,
deal with the loss of a parent.
Yeah, and I'm glad your dad's doing well. And you showed me that picture yesterday. He's looking pretty fit, man. I think he could take me in a fight. So I don't want to be
for about 30 seconds, and then he's got to lay back down.
Either way, he's looking like he's in pretty good shape. So that's good for him.
Yeah.
I don't think we may have talked about it a little bit early on in the podcast, but my father passed away.
Yeah.
Late 2017. It was November 28th.
17. So that was just before Titus was born.
That was just before Titus was born. About a little over 2 weeks before Titus was born.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that close.
Yeah. We went down to visit him in October. He's right in the middle of pumpkin patch, so a little inconvenient there, Pop.
Wait, November?
He passed in November, but we visited him in October. Like we knew the signs.
Gotcha.
He had
Okay.
left the hospital to stay at home at that point.
He didn't go to hospice?
He didn't go to hospice. They had hospice care come into the house.
Oh, okay.
But he didn't want to be in the hospital. He didn't want to be in hospice. So he went home, and they had people come care for him when he needed it. So we went to go visit him in October, which I guess is kind of a blessing because he got me out of pumpkin patch. A couple days off. Came down.
Oh, right. You were in Jacksonville then.
Yeah, I was up in Jacksonville when this all happened. And so my dad, we grew up in the same town. He was in the same town with me as I was growing up. We were always in Palm Beach Gardens together.
Oh,
and when we were younger,
I thought he moved away.
No, he's lived in South Florida as long as I can remember. Oh. So at least I know he and my mom kind of moved around, but by the time Kyle was born, had settled in South Florida.
Okay.
And so we were always in the same town. And when we were younger, we saw him more often.
Okay.
We'd spend like every other weekend, and we'd go spend the night with him. And that was fun, when we were kids, and, get to see Grandma and Grandpa Dennis over there too. And it's kind of weird the way you phrase the question, and maybe I'm not the one to answer it, because you're thinking of like, what was it like to not, if you lose your dad, what's it like when he's not there anymore? And it's like, well, I mean, my dad wasn't really there anyway. So,
I see.
I've said this before. I think my dad was he was a nice guy named Dad.
Yeah, okay.
And I love the guy, but we didn't really reconnect there towards the end.
No.
We wanted to, and we'd always talk about it, but it's one of those things you always think you're going to have more time.
Yeah, and that's I think like I was saying with my grandparents, like you always think there's more time, and then there might not be.
Yeah, and I wish I could say it was like, I don't know. Whenever we did see him, it was always like, oh, well, maybe this will be different. We'll start seeing each other more often, but it just never really happened.
Interesting.
Even if he was still around today, we'd probably see him more because of the kids.
I was going to say, I would be willing to bet that you would see him more often just because of the kids.
Just to bring the kids around.
Or because he wants to see the kids.
Yeah, and he got to see pregnant Marcy, but he passed before Titus was born.
Oh, dude, you know what I just realized? Exact same topic. Dax Shepard's dad died about the same time. I don't know about like time, like the year, but Kristen
before he became a father.
Kristen Bell was pregnant, and pregnant Kristen spent time with his dad in the hospital. I was listening to one of the Armchair Expert episodes, and that he was talking about that, and it just, you said that you got to see pregnant Marcy, and it clicked. It was like, oh, wait a minute.
Wow, I should hang out with that guy.
Dude, he would be so cool. And he's a dad. I want to have him on the podcast, but we'd have to use a lot of bleeps.
Yeah, probably. We'll tweet at him and say, hey, we're a small pod, help us out. Big fan. You can sit in your chair.
You can sit in your armchair and I'll sit in my armchair. Although he doesn't like doing like this.
Like Zoom?
Yeah. So he said,
where do they live?
Way off topic.
Way off topic.
They're in LA, I think. They're in Southern California. I know that. But so
I can go to LA.
I would. That was his thing. Like, he was going to have somebody big was going to come on the pod, but they would only do it via a web chat. Doug. And he didn't want to do that. He wanted them to come up. He records in his attic, and they've got like a setup there. I mean, I only have a mental image of it. Mm-hmm. But they were in Washington D.C. and they're in, Dax is in Southern California, so I'm not traveling out there for the interview. But since COVID, he's had to do everything digitally, and he said it's been great because he had huge names on that he couldn't get before because they only would do digital. So it's a very
the future, man.
Yeah, man. COVID's been really bad for a lot of people, but this is. And, it may be an unpopular opinion, but bringing video chatting into the mainstream of like business and hanging out and all that I think that's a net
future.
Positive. Yeah.
That's the future. That's what they're doing in all those in those movies and stuff.
Oh yeah, dude. This is the way of the future. Don't you look?
Next you'll be a hologram sitting on my desk.
Yeah, right? Next thing you know, man. And I'll look over here and I'll see part of your desk. I won't be looking over here and looking at a wall. I'll look at your, like, whatever's over there on your computer. So, but anyways.
That'd be fun. Anyways.
Your dad got to see
pregnant Marcy. Hang out with Dax Shepard. I think that was the message, the takeaway from there.
Yeah.
My dad got to see pregnant Marcy. We went to go see him, but, it was towards the, and yeah, it was kind of surreal in that it was like, this could be it. I mean, this is going to be the last time, but, he wasn't a huge part of our life there towards the end. So after he passed, I mean, nothing really changed, and I feel bad saying that.
Well, my mom's dad was the same way. To me, he always lived down the street from us, and I didn't know that. Like, when we moved from Miami, he stayed in Miami because all of my family was down there. We moved up to Palm Beach, and it was just us. So once everybody else had moved, my mom brought him up to Palm Beach County. We went and saw him when he moved in, and that was it. And then I was 12 when he died. So I guess it was only, 4 years he lived in Palm Beach County. And I started to see him more regularly. But I mean, the guy would drink a handle of vodka in 2 days. He just drank way too much. He drank himself to death is what happened. But it was kind of like you were saying, the same thing. He just wasn't around.
That in the end is really what got my dad as well. Just partied a little too much, and he knew. We had a couple scares earlier when I was younger because of liver damage and because of smoking. And he smoked and he drank every day. And there was a period where I knew he was still smoking. I don't think he ever really gave that one up. I don't think he ever went to vaping either. Now that I think about it. Not that it would have really helped. Actually, the damage was kind of already done at that point. He might have. I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't know.
Where was I going with that? There was a period where he did stop drinking and he was like having non-alcoholic beer. And then at one point he just, we'd see him and he'd have a beer. And what am I going to be like? Hey, don't drink that, dude. I don't know your life right now.
Yeah. I mean, what are you going to do?
he's going to do his thing. And I guess, when you go through that, it's always a possibility. But I know my stepmom always wished that we reached out a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think what it is that, me and my brother have a little bit of an introvert streak, and I think we get that from my father.
That makes sense.
You've met my mother.
She is
she's not an introvert by any, any account of the word. So we just, we all kept our own space. She wished we reach out, but, we always were like, hey, well, we're here too, Yeah. You know where I work. Come to church anytime you want.
I remember a few times he came into church, and it was weird for me because I didn't really know your dad.
Yeah.
But that's why I always thought he'd moved away. Like at first I thought he'd passed. So then you said, no, I'm going to hang out with my dad. I'm like, oh, well, I guess I was wrong on that one. So I just thought he'd moved away somewhere. Like, I don't know, the Bahamas.
Could have been the Bahamas.
But didn't your parents meet there?
Oh, I don't remember. I don't know where my parents met.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. We don't really talk about it. That we didn't see him very often. We didn't talk about it. That's for sure. But yeah, so I think to get more to your point, your question of now we're fathers.
Yeah.
Right. And at this stage in the game, what happens if a parent dies? I think the worst part, there's a lot that is bad about my father passing, but I think the worst part is really realizing that, my kids aren't going to have a grandfather.
Right.
Marcy's father passed away before I met the family. We actually just celebrated 10 years, celebrated his life.
I think that's a good
thing. Family back in January.
Wow.
But he's going to have two great grandmas. He does have two great grandmas. My grandma and Marcy's grandma are both still alive.
Okay.
But he's going to have two awesome grandmas as well.
Yes, he will. I am I'm a fan of your mother-in-law. She's a very sweet person. Yeah. So that's pretty awesome.
They love it when Mimi comes to town. That's for sure. I think that's the weirdest thing is like, because my grandfather was such a big part of my life.
Yeah.
Ironically, because of my father's absence, we spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and that's why me and my brother are the favorite grandkids, quote unquote, because they had so much more to do, I think, with our raising than we realize.
Yeah.
It's going to be a sad day. We'll have another podcast when they pass. That'll be a really sad day. We'll do something in memory.
We'll readdress this at a later date.
So, but that said, like, I never reached out to my dad when I had questions and stuff. And I know you might have a different experience with your dad. You seem to have a pretty good relationship with him.
It's funny because we were not close. So like my brother and I were never close. We would fight and beat each other up when we were kids. And then once he moved away, I didn't talk to my brother for 2 years. And not because like I'm not talking to him. We just didn't talk. I had nothing to talk about. And, if we saw each other or like if he happened to call my mom and I was there, then, hey, how's it going? Whatever. Maybe the occasional text, happy birthday, that kind of stuff. But we just weren't close. And then I got married, and it was like a switch flipped. And so my brother and I got fairly close. I'll just call him now for no reason. Just, hey, dude. Like I called him last night because my dog was in a fight and she got a boo-boo. And she needed to go to the vet, and I did not want to take her to the vet because I don't take myself to the doctor, and because they're expensive and they're just going to tell me what I already know. And the problem is I already knew she needed to go to the doctor, and I just needed somebody else to say, no, dude, take your dog to the doctor. And so I called my brother. Yeah. Like I knew what was needed. I just didn't want to do it, So take her to the doctor. So I did, and she's all better now. Well, I mean,
that's kind of funny the way you worded it. The doctor's going to tell you what you already need to know, and you knew the dog needed to go to the doctor. So you take the dog to the doctor, and they're like, hey, man, good thing you came to the doctor.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Hey, you need to take this dog to the doctor.
Isn't that what I did?
You're the doctor.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Oh, yeah, dude. I don't know why Tommy Chong's your vet, but
Spicoli. Oh man. Anyways, so similarly to my father, we were really close when I was a kid because I was the firstborn. I was his boy, and then he worked a lot. So there was a couple of years where my dad just wasn't there, and it wasn't that he wasn't around. He was at home all day, and because he did real estate in the evenings, he would go show properties. So he wasn't home when I got home from school, and he would come home like at bedtime. And so it was like he just wasn't around. And then that only lasted a couple years. And it was funny that for a while, that was what I remembered. But then, we hung out a lot growing up. He was not at every sporting event that I had, but most of them. And I played baseball for a couple of years in elementary school. But every time we had a show, and I did theater in middle school and high school, he was at one of them. Right, so he would come and he would see all of my stuff, all the stuff I did. Anytime I had like an art showing, he was there, and he was always really involved in my life. And it was weird. I was closer to my mom. Like I asked my mom questions, not my dad.
Yeah.
Until recently, until I had kids, and now it's like, well, I'll ask my mom questions still all the time because she's more readily available. My dad lives 2.5 hours away, so it's not as easy to contact. My mom's
more readily available than my dad right now, too.
I can't imagine why. But so like there's times that I'll say, "Hey, Dad, but what did you do with this situation?" And normally I don't know. It's not a thing. I'm just going to make it up as I go along. So I'll talk to him about it after the fact. I don't really ask for advice a lot. I ask for advice after I've made a decision.
Yeah. Hey, I did this. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So like we talked about Charlotte May coming into my bed at night. And hey, so she's been coming into our bed at night. And he said, "Oh man, I used to love it when you guys would do that." And I always had this impression that we were supposed to be very quiet, so we didn't wake Daddy because Daddy didn't want us in bed. And he goes, No. I loved it when you guys came into bed. I got snuggles and And looking back, I actually see that now. Like at the time, I had to be quiet, and I always went to Mommy's side. But if I went to Daddy's side, I get a big old hug and snuggles. So I don't know. It's funny.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't play the card often, but I could always get into like sob story mode and thinking of things that like my dad ever came to. The only thing I ever really remember him coming to, and I tell it because it's kind of funny, and it's like, is he came to my first freshman football game at Gardens High School.
Freshman football, man.
Yeah, freshman football, when there were so many people on the team.
Yep.
And I had so little idea of what I was doing on the field. Mm-hmm. I didn't even get a jersey. I had to sit on the sideline. And at Gardens, you had to come dressed up. So like I'm in my dress shirt and my tie. That was like game day. You had to wear it. It was a team thing, So I'm on the sideline, all dressed up. And my dad came to see my first freshman football game, and I didn't even get to play.
You didn't even get to dress up.
I didn't even get to dress up. I quit the team right after that.
I didn't even make my first freshman football game. I had no idea what I was doing. And I thought I was going to tryouts, right? And they're going to say, okay, do this. And I'll go do that.
Yeah.
Except they said, okay, go, everybody stand here. Now you're going to do this. And when I said, well, what are we going to do? He said, shut up and do it. What? So I kept looking. I don't know. The coach was not a good coach.
Yeah.
So I actually just walked off the field.
Yeah, and I'd heard good things about the coaches at Gardens when I was there, and it wasn't so much that they weren't teaching us to play; it's that they had like over 100 kids on that field.
Yeah,
they just and that was the whole thing with freshman football is they don't cut anybody.
Which is
and they told us. They told us from the beginning, like, stick it out. Even if you don't get a play time, stick it out. We'll get you on the field when we can. But for other reasons than that, I left the football team. Mostly that the girls I was not interested in football players. So I was like, well, I'm out of here.
Yeah, that's funny.
I was into the artsy fartsy type.
Yeah, me too.
Football was not impressing. Anyway,
Nah.
and that all that to say, too, it's not that I didn't have people I couldn't reach out to growing up. And this is actually when I talk to students about why the church is such a big deal for me. The church really was a big, I say fill in the gaps. That's my term when I'm talking to the kids. Like, the church filled in the gaps for me because my dad wasn't around. I didn't have that male figure in my life, but at the church, we had some awesome male volunteers, and we had awesome people who worked with the students to model for me and to be the guy I can go ask those questions to, which is a big reason why I'm in the church today and why I think church is important.
Yeah, it's funny because I had somebody at home. I had two somebodies at home, and the church was still that place for me. So, I mean, I think that the church has some things to work out. The global church.
Oh, for sure.
We've got some issues we need to deal with, and we need to pull our head out of our tuchus, and we need to have a serious conversation, and we need to realize what we're doing.
That's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other episode. But
that's not even an episode. That's a whole other podcast. Of things we can say.
True. True. But but all that aside,
not that church.
all that aside, church shoes.
Church shoes. Oh man, that sounds perfect.
It does sound perfect. I said it as a joke. I'm like, oh, that's actually pretty good.
Next week on church shoes, we'll talk about all the reasons.
But anyways, I mean, all that to be said, the core of the global church, I think it's still there, and it gives people that fill in the gap. There's something that's missing, and I'm sure Marcy, and I'm sure your wife would say something similar because I've heard her talk about it. That the church fills that place. It wasn't necessarily the church that filled that place, but the church gave her guidance in absence of her father. And we can cut that out too if you want.
We'll see when I'm listening to it.
Yeah, but I don't want to speak for her, but just what I have heard her say.
Yeah, I mean that's all part of the story,
right?
Which we can get into that. So it is a little surreal, and I said this last time, and I want to make sure I say it again, because you messaged me about talking about my dad passing, and I don't know that you fully realized what all that meant to me.
Yeah.
Because I haven't really talked about it with anybody. And podcasting's cheaper than therapy.
Both of those things are true, as far as I know.
Yeah. So far, anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, because you don't. Yeah, I know you haven't talked about it with me. It's just like if I've ever asked you a question about your dad, you answered it. So
yeah, it was just kind of a weird. It's just kind of a thing that happened. And at the time, we were getting ready to have our first kid, and so we really, I don't want to say moved on from it, but we didn't dwell on it.
Yeah,
As time passed, I've gone back and reflected on it. And when my father passed, it was really more of just a reminder of all the things I didn't have.
Oh, yeah?
It was more like, well, now I didn't have somebody around to miss, And I think he tried. I think we both did the best we could.
Well, it's like you said, you both had this kind of shyness about you. And if you didn't have...
and we would get together and we would have meals and stuff together, and, we would find something to talk about. It wasn't like we were awkward or didn't want to talk to each other or anything like that. We'd find something to talk about whenever we got together. I enjoyed going to see him.
Yeah.
But, we just... It was more of a reminder of like, I didn't have the thing to miss in a sense because he was around the most that he could. And it's weird now, like it's almost like a whole other side of my family that I don't know because I know my mom's side of the family so well.
Yeah.
That we all live in the same area, but my dad's side of the family I don't know very well. And so it's kind of weird, like, when some of the anniversaries come by, when the anniversary of his passing comes or his birthday was just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Well, middle of the month.
Seeing like all the family members like, oh man, what a great uncle. I miss that guy. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm glad he was a good uncle. That's
not funny.
No. And I still I still hold out hope, and I'd love to get to know that part of the family. That's the one thing, and I think this is a big part of my Detroit Lions fandom. I say it's the best thing my dad ever gave me, the best and worst thing. It's the best thing. It's still that one thing that like connects me to that side of the family, even though the members of that side of the family that I know are Packers fans.
Go Pack! See, I knew you came from good stock. It's actually funny what you were saying there. I had this image from Endgame, the Avengers Endgame, and it was kind of leading up from Iron Man, right from the very beginning. Tony Stark, Howard Stark was never around, right? He wasn't a good dad. He was a terrible father, right, to Tony. And then, and we see how like through the series, we're watching Tony progress, and then there's when he's on lockdown in his house. I think it was Iron Man 3, and he's got the videos, watching the videos of the Stark Expo, and maybe it was Iron Man 2. I don't know. And it was the original Stark. Anyway, so he's watching these videos of Howard promoting the Stark Expo, and then Tony gets in there and he yells at Tony, and then at the end of it he says, "Hey man, this is all for you." And then fast forward a few movies, at Endgame he goes back in time and runs into Howard Stark, and his wife is pregnant, and he's like, "Oh well, look at that, it's me." And they're having a conversation, and at this point Tony Stark is now a dad of just the most adorable 5-year-old, and this will run right into our little dads in media kind of deal. But Howard Stark says, there's not a thing I wouldn't do for that kid. He's not even here yet. And I think that, if you were to be able to have a conversation with your father, I'm sure it would go something very similar. Like, yeah, I'd do anything for it. Love the kid to death, right? But different people show it in different ways. Like Howard Stark tried to make the world a better place for his kid, right? Make his kid have everything he could to get by. Wasn't really there a lot for Tony Stark, but he did his best. Right, did what he could. I had that like, hey, this is a good little parallel here. Yeah,
I was thinking more like Cobra Kai too.
Yeah,
where I don't know. I don't think you got this far in the series.
I don't like episode 4.
I got really into it. I watched all that's available right now. But there's a whole storyline there about Johnny being a dad, and before his son was born, he was just so scared.
Yeah.
And so worried that he wasn't going to be good enough, and it was that like kept him from being establishing a great relationship with his son, as he was just afraid. And I would love to have talked with my father about that. And, still would. My message for you and for your father is your dad just has the responsibility to be the best damn grandpa that he can be, because he has that opportunity.
Was it you that said it? He's got to earn that shirt.
He's got to earn that shirt. Number one grandpa.
Yeah, that was good. He does a really good job. He really does. And that was. I'm always pretty positive on things. Like, yeah, everything's gonna be fine. Whatever, it'll be okay. And it was like the first thing in my head went was, I don't know if everything's gonna be fine. So that was for me. That was a little bit of a switch. I had to like mentally, no, everything's gonna be fine. He'll be okay. And then if not, the problem is there's nothing you can do during COVID. Not last year, 2019. If my dad got sick, he's in the hospital with some real bad. I'm going to go visit him. Dad, is there anything I can do? How can I help you? What do you need? What can I do? My brother and I were talking about taking time off work. Let's go see Dad and hang out with him and help him out. But what am I going to do? Stay at his house while he's in the hospital? I can just work,
Water his plants.
Yeah, really. 3 ice cubes in each orchid.
Glad he's doing well.
Yeah, man. Me too. Thanks, buddy. Oh, before I forget, I found this new cheese. I think you'll like it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's Gouda.
It's Gouda?
Yeah. Sorry, Connor, that was a cheesy joke.
That was a cheesy joke. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with us today on Dad Shoes. There's a little bit of a drag this time.
Yeah.
But we'd really appreciate it if you'd share this with your friends. Help us get the word out. If you have any feedback for us on our podcast, you can reach out to us on Twitter @DadChoosePod or email us at dadshoespod@gmail.com. Have you ever thought about life without your parents? Or you just need someone to talk to about it? We'd love to be that person to talk to. We'd love to hear from you. We'd also appreciate it if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast. Thanks again for hanging out.
Peace.